now. Everything just kind of,
Awesome.
okay, we're
Perfect.
recording.
And then it also needs to be
Um,
in the grid format. I'm not sure how to do that.
It needs to
ooh,
be in what format?
The
grid
grid
format.
format.
Like it can't keep like
Oh,
transitioning back and
Yeah.
forth.
Okay.
I
It's
think
in the
the
corner,
I
right
think the
next to the
host.
bottom.
is it the view thing on the top right?
Yeah, it just says gallery view. I think that's what it is for.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Awesome.
I was gonna have, that's just, yeah. Sorry, I've never ran a Zoom call before.
It's a little confusing.
Sweet. Hold on.
Okay.
Cool. So is somebody recording? Yeah, you're
Yes, it's
recording.
still recording.
Okay, do you know how to
So,
like save that and upload it to YouTube?
I'm gonna try.
Sweet. I will also record just in case.
Okay.
And then
Alrighty. Should we get
we have
started?
Let's do it.
Yeah.
we have to change it to the
Sweet.
grid.
Okay, so do you agree or disagree with the claims the video makes about consumer power in the market? I agree because I think the video emphasized that consumers now have just a bunch of power, and it's like seen through online reviews and just like anywhere like technology now, people can easily like take a picture of something, see what it's made out of, and then you can influence other consumers into whether they want to buy a product. So I feel like definitely now with like how advanced technology has become, the power in the market has just like increased for consumers.
Yeah, 100%. Especially with that one lady who wrote those over 900 reviews.
Mhm.
It makes a huge impact on what people think about those different items.
I was also gonna say like the flow of information that we have now with like the rate at which like information can be spread across a populace. Like if there is something wrong with a product or a company like is like kind of specifically doing something against a specific population, they figure out about it pretty quickly, and they also have the power to like, look for outside corporations and other corporations to, like, get their products. And I think that gives the consumer a lot of power when it comes to like, choosing what kind of companies you want to align with when it comes to like, buying clothes or getting cars or like all that kind of different stuff, which they talked about like with like the green advertising and like, like the not polluting as much, or like when Nike like had those factories that were, all messed up and like there were all the sexual assault cases and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So like that flow of information kind of it wasn't good for Nike, but then like the push towards like, like the greener production lines and like all that kind of stuff. Once consumers figured out about that, they kind of put back into Nike and then decided to invest their power back into it.
It
Yeah,
So
definitely.
definitely helps with consumers and like trying to figure out like what companies you want to buy from and all of that. And like finding out which has great products and which ones like don't and have less quality ones.
Hmm.
I think there are significant limitations to the decisions consumers are able to make. Um, you're able to The flow of information between consumers is super high. You're able to talk to anybody around the world. But if you look at how society is set up, if you want to purchase a car and you happen to live in rural Montana, you're not going anywhere. You're stuck. You have to purchase a car. You have to have a piece of transportation. So you're required to purchase some aspects of life. And a lot of times those purchases are limited, but depending on the situation. But there are severe limitations, especially given how, um, like if you look at like government contractors that are large tech companies, they happen to own significant portions of the market. Even if, like watching the earlier video, Zappos, high customer service reviews, definitely helped out their customers. But if you look, they're owned by Amazon.
Mhm.
They're a subsidiary of Amazon. The competition within the distribution, or not the distribution, the
Oh, what happened?
I don't
The
know.
recording stopped.
It's going back on.
the
Mine just shut down, so I don't know what happened.
Luke,
did-
were you recording also? You said.
So I actually had to request the host to record, and I never got approved for that.
Well, I guess we could just put both clips together.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was like,
I
mine's been recording the entire time. So I don't know, my
It
my
has?
laptop just kind of dipped for a minute.
Is it still recording?
Yeah.
Recording right now.
Okay.
But sorry, to continue my little rant, the
Okay.
competition within online consumerism is completely dominated by a single company.
Yeah.
So you're required to pay your money to that company, even if it doesn't look like it on the surface, because Zappos has good marketing. They're still owned by somebody else. And their logistics is all operate like their shipping networks are completely through Amazon shipping networks.
Well,
So
that
it's
kind of
not-
gets into like the corporatocracy of like, everyone is kind of owned by everything, and like it all kind of like gets weird when you get up into like the bigger companies, like with the like who actually is like the largest shareholder and what, and who's making the decisions, and it all tends to be the same people.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
And it's not like a big conspiracy. Like it's not, oh, there's one person that rules the world or one corporation. But Amazon happens to have the best logistics around shipping massive amounts of stuff around the world.
Mhm.
So of course they're going to purchase another company that does something better than them.
Exactly.
They have the ability they can. So consumers are limited in how they're able to purchase their things. Like if you look for disaster relief, a lot of like Hurricane Katrina. I think this was a couple years ago. But if you looked, toilet paper manufacturer. Was this in the book, or is this something I'm pulling out of my? But toilet paper manufacturers jacked the fuck out of their prices. Sorry for the language. Actually, not really, but they price gouged everybody in a hurt community for basic human necessities, which honestly, fair enough, demand's really high. But they were unable to purchase through traditional means, so they had to purchase through other things.
Like distribution networks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. So consumer choice is very limited, and the power that consumers have, they can be organized and decide, let's not do this. Like most recently, there was some, I don't know what the group is called, but they had blackout dates for purchasing literally anything. Just like don't buy anything on X day because they were dissatisfied with the current administration. And I'm not sure how that worked or how it affected the market or how it affected anything, but I know it existed. And because I never heard about it, or other people, like I assume you guys never heard about it either. Maybe you guys did. I don't know.
Are you talking about like the blackout days for like Amazon and all these different like bigger corporations?
Oh, okay. I know.
Protests.
Yeah. So, like I heard about it, but I didn't understand what they were trying to do.
Yeah, well, like the basic idea behind them is like if you get enough people to like not go buy stuff from these corporations, they're like so in the red because like, corporations like Walmart and like other like supercenter distribution kind of people, like if their like store, for example, doesn't sell anything, they're like $2 to $3 million in the red like on the day. So it's like it's fast paced and it's pretty risky if they don't actually sell anything, but because they so consistently sell stuff, they usually end up fine. But that's why like that was like the premise behind like the blackouts being able to like hurt the larger corporations.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but I don't think it actually did. It definitely hurt them on the day, but it didn't hurt them long term. You know, like if you're trying to organize a group of people to do something, you need to get a large enough, like at the moment, you need to get hundreds of thousands, millions of people to engage in anti-consumerism.
Yeah, which isn't going to happen in America.
It's pretty unrealistic.
Yeah.
But something I found super interesting, not really I'm not sure if we could talk about this later, but I think it'll be all right. Was self-regulation versus legislation regulation. Like in the 80s, Japanese motorcycle manufacturers, the big five, Kawasaki, Yamaha, Suzuki, I don't know, the big Japanese motorcycle manufacturers limited the speed in which they would create their motorcycles at 180 miles. Nobody was allowed to break 180 mile an hour barrier. Although they could, like engineering was able to, manufacturing processes, you were able to. But they didn't want to receive regulation from the government, so they self-regulated. And then here in America, we have a little bit less of a collectivist society. We have more of individuals acting with each other. So we would need more government regulation instead of self-regulation within the companies. And the self-regulation within companies can't happen through, or
This is
won't
also
happen
kind of
consumers coming together. It needs a different level of regulation.
Yeah, I was also going to kind of say like this is the land of excess. Like corporations and businesses have been known to kind of push things like until the point of like legal intervention here. That's just how it is. With
Which,
like, well, especially with the way our government works, like lobbying and stuff like that, that should be illegal. Like our our congressmen and women and our Senate are like paid to vote certain ways. So that's fun.
and if you're, like another, at the bottom of chapter 1, section 5, there's a paragraph about like fuel economy in vehicles and how electric vehicle manufacturers are lobbying to get more electric vehicles made and they get subsidized on these things. But this was due to environmental regulations pushed on automakers. So you needed to have X fuel efficiency in your cars, given your car is Y size. So vehicle manufacturers just increased the size of our cars. They didn't make them more fuel efficient. They increased the size of the car to avoid regulation. So it's a poor policy, but if you like, a Ford F-150 is a monstrous truck. Nobody really needs a truck that big unless you're actually doing truck activities. You're hauling something, you're putting something in the truck, you're building something. But if you're just driving to your 9 to 5, no reason to have that. And they were able to avoid legislation regulation, or they were able to avoid governmental regulation because it was a poor policy.
Basically.
So, yeah. I don't think consumers have the ability to choose. They have a lot of power in the market because if you're not purchasing anything, the company's going to go out of business. But
it needs to be like a collective thing.
yes, it's too collectivist.
I kind of disagree. I think that like if the consumer like really wanted to, they could like, localize and get their stuff through like small businesses and stuff. However, you're not going to get a car through a small business and you're not going to get like a washing machine through a small business. So there are like some things where you are pushed to necessity to like fall into these like bigger companies like wallets basically.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the organization's brand campaigns featured in the video and address the elements of the marketing mix.
Well, one of the P's that I noticed, I guess, if we're going to talk about the 4 P's, was the price in American Virgin Airlines. Lower prices, and they were able to, I guess, kind of survive. If you look now, they're owned by Alaska Airlines, but they were competitive through their pricing, which is fantastic, and they advertised it pretty well. That's just one aspect of the P.
One of the 4 P's I saw was like promotion, and that was with like the Pepsi ads. They compared in the video, they compared like Chanel's 20 million investment ad versus Pepsi's 20 million investment ad. And Pepsi just did so much better with like 8 billion views, I think, compared to like 4 billion views or 4 million views that Chanel had. and it was because they promoted Pepsi and not just like a soda and like trying to like deceive customers into like, okay, soda's not bad for you, just buy it. Instead, they like promoted based on what consumers wanted. So they promoted in like doing good and like um kind of using their shares to pay for things that were like school related or community related. And I think just like promoting more towards the environment and consumers like well-being really promoted them well.
Yeah.
On
Um,
Pepsi's,
you
sorry, go
first.
ahead.
Go for
Well, and Pepsi's known for their super famous commercials. Like at least once a year, they have one big name in like the music industry or the acting industry. And it worked from once, and they just continued to do it each year with a different celebrity, and they just keep getting the views.
Hmm.
And that's been a big thing for Pepsi and their promotions and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd like, or something that I was thinking about was just the ethics of promotion to an extent. You were when Pepsi does all these marketing campaigns to go like, oh yes, we're giving $100,000 to children's education, or we're giving $50,000 to or for food, or we're doing these things to help communities. I think that is fantastic, and they should continue to do that, and consumers should continue to support that. But the unethical aspect, or the possible unethical aspect, depending on how you look at it, is the promotion of those campaigns. So if you do that strictly, if you do it strictly for the promotion, it's a little bit unethical. But if you do it because you actually care about the children, or you care about the cause,
Mhm.
then it's more ethical. Or
Yeah, I think
it's
that puts like an interesting idea forward in the fact that like, people are actually willing to pay like a higher price or like a premium for ethical or like, like morally conscious products. So like a lot of the marketing mixes slash like promotions or like what went into the price, a lot of the products that we saw in the film was like them literally like kind of delving into that like, oh, like we're green and environmentally healthy and like we're going to talk publicly about like where our company is like going to pollute or like like the kinds of efficiencies that we're going to involve in our like production process and stuff like that. So like they're like like they're like, oh, like we're not like ruining everything around us and you want to pay more for that. And it works, like it works well, like it's like Nike. I don't know if this was in the this wasn't in the documentary, but like Nike does their whole like, how they like recycle all like the plastics and they have those kind of clothes that like have their logos where it's all like the ironed together microplastics and it's all like environmentally safe. They charge an extra $10 to $30 for each one of those hoodies or each one of those shoes that they make with those recycled microplastics. So they're charging a premium for it, but because they market it so well and because like, people think it looks cool, they're willing to pay a premium for it, which I thought was wildly interesting.
Yeah, and it all just another company to toss out there that I got interested in a little bit ago
Mhm.
was Tony's Chocolate, or Tony's Chocolate Only, and they source all their beans from like ethical farmers, and they pay their farmers decently. Apparently, I didn't look into it past their website, but I was confused why, because their chocolate bars are really expensive, and I was like, what? But you're supporting local farmers, and people were willing to pay that premium price for
Mhm.
ethical sourcing of coffee beans, or not coffee beans,
Cocoa
cocoa
beans.
beans, cocoa beans. And he marketed it really well, because I even emailed the company. I was like, why is it called Tony's Chocolate Lonely instead of Tony's Chocolate or whatever?
Mhm.
But he was the only one well, according to him, he was the only one in the entire chocolate industry sourcing strictly from like ethical sources. And
That
people
is
were, yeah. So he
that gets
marketed.
into like the production line aspect of things where it's like, like a lot of these companies, like, well, in specific materials, there kind of really is no ethical production line. Like when we look at like lithium mining and stuff like that for all these like electrical subsidized cars, it's literally just like child slave labor and like all this like messed up, like just horrific laws going on down in like basically wherever we can find lithium. If there's like kind of not law there, we're gonna force as many people as we can to dig there as possible. And these companies are like they hold responsibility for opening these dig sites and running these mines. However, they're not like liable to like pay for these people or like, take care of them because the laws in these different countries are kind of funky.
Mm.
Like that gets into like the whole like are electric cars seriously ethical? Because you have to get into the what kind of power are we pulling from to go mine the lithium? Are we pulling from coal power, nuclear power, like all these different things? And then what like also goes along with that is the energy that it takes to get the lithium like from the mine to like the battery form into the car. And then what electricity are we charging the lithium batteries with? Like where is that produced? Usually from coal plants and stuff like that. So like I don't know how ethical the green car consumer industry is
Well,
if
it
you like
doesn't sound
actually look
too
at it.
doesn't sound too ethical at all.
Well, the production of the green car industry, probably not terribly ethical. And then another aspect that's not super ethical is your ownership over your car. You don't own your car anymore. You own the hardware, you own the wires and the cabling and the battery in your car, but you don't own the software that turns your car on and
Mhm.
runs the car. Um, so if you want to, when you purchase that product, you don't actually own that product. You own a
Parts of
subsection.
it.
Yeah, you own sections of it, which people are now talking about it. And if you look, the biggest car like Tesla's kind of in the pooper.
Mhm.
And that's more a jab at his most recent administration duties, and less that is, oh, your Tesla cars are bad for consumers.
Mhm.
But I'm just going to disregard that. Yeah. But if you look, people are aware. There's more awareness, which is
Yeah.
pretty cool. Um,
How do you think the choices made by the featured organizations slash people might relate to their SWOT analysis? We already kind of talked about this a little bit.
yeah. Hmm.
Don't know if I have much to say on that. Discuss the strategic goals that the organizations in the video are trying to achieve. I would say they're all just trying to achieve like a more ethical and like better marketing mix. However, impossible that's going to be for each of these various companies. Like Patagonia talking about like, environmentally sustainable like manufacturing and stuff like that, but then also coming out and be like, yeah, like we're spraying your clothes with poison, by the way,
Well, and
before.
like just to get everything produced and all of that, how ethical can you really make something between how you get like how you get what you need to make it and then produce it and then get it out and all of that?
I think the
That
goal
is
that a
fair.
lot of those brands were just trying to reach is like transparency because like Patagonia, they already knew that their clothes were like toxic. Like they had certain materials that were toxic, but like as long as they were transparent, that boosted their sales. So I feel like no matter what, like they know certain things are unethical or not environmentally conscious, but as long as they're transparent, that builds like partnerships with their consumers. It's aligning with like what the consumers want, and that just overall just boosts sales. Like it really doesn't matter as long as it's boosting their credibility because they're so transparent, and that's just overall good for their company.
I'm not sure if
Also,
this. Oh, I just have a little quick example, but um, I'm not sure if it was in the video or if I'm pulling this out from somewhere else. But I think Patagonia or some clothing manufacturer released a line of clothing and it said, "Do not purchase this clothing," and they sold out in like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Um,
yeah.
so they were transparent in the way, like, "Oh, this is a piece of consumerism," and yet people still consumed it. They were like, "Don't do this," but they gave you the means to do it. Therefore, I'm going to do it. And it was super transparent. They're like, "This isn't the most ethical thing to be doing. Don't buy this thing." and then people still did.
Well,
And
so companies have to choose between being transparent or trying to make it seem better than it actually is to try and boost sales. So
yeah,
it all depends on whether consumers want to trust the people who are being completely transparent, or they're going to go with the what sounds like the more ethical people, whether they're actually more ethical or not.
And I was also gonna say, like, adding on to your point, it's almost impossible to like develop an actually like ethical product because like when we look at like most of the stuff that we have nowadays, like the core parts that actually make up what functions like the whole product as a whole are coming from like various parts across the planet that like imagine if you tried to assemble a toaster from like the raw materials and like collecting them yourself and shit like that. Like you'd have to go mine for 10 years in like 3 to 4 different parts of the world just to get like some of like the necessary materials to do that. And then you'd have to go find oil and like turn it into plastic and figure out how to make the knob out of like the petrochemicals and stuff like that. So it's like the amount of like raw material that we're just kind of getting from anywhere and like mixing together and making all this stuff is like pretty ridiculous. So it is like almost impossible to like find like every distribution channel for all these different raw materials and have it like be, in a spot where it's ethical enough for you to like, be transparent about it.
Yeah.
yeah. The and I would, with most recent, I mean not most recent, but every time you log into a new website or create a Zoom account in this case, or literally do anything, you're signing a user agreement, and those user agreements are available to you. They are transparent, but they're 50 pages long.
Who's gonna
Very
read
few
that?
people actually sit down to read them and go, yes, this is what I want you to do. And if you look at, um, oh, I don't want to say the wrong name here because this is really, really bad. Fuck. It was a telehealth company that did online therapy. I can't remember what the company was
I
called.
know I know who you're talking about. Isn't it like betterhealth.com or some shit?
Is it
It's
better me?
no. They got. I'll keep them nameless. I'm not sure who it is, but anyway, the users would go to their meetings. They meet with their therapists. They talk about it. They do whatever they need, and then they would gather these just mass amounts of data from their consumers, and then sell it to Facebook, Google. They'd sell it to the huge tech companies, which is absolutely atrocious. That is disturbingly bad. You
Yeah.
can't sell medical information. That is, but it was in the user agreement, so it is legal. They got fined like $6.5 million or
So there
something.
was
So,
no
almost,
like user patient confidentiality.
yes, none of that. Like it was there, sort of, but they bypassed it somehow. And the repercussions for their actions were not necessarily equal. And it was like hundreds of thousands of users' data getting sold
That's
to
wild.
target. Like if you were a depressed person, I will target advertise you well, I guess in this case it could be antidepressant medication, but or something that like more chocolate, literally anything. It doesn't really matter. Whatever that individual consumer wanted. And what really peeved me about it was the lack of transparency in how they were using that data.
Yeah, that's actually crazy. Like
Yeah.
getting your therapy sessions like sold to a data company like fucking Meta or Instagram. That's awesome. Which elements, i.e., forces in the marketing environment, seem most relevant to the topics discussed in the film?
Oh, just it was BetterHelp. I couldn't forget.
Hell yeah. Okay. I think that sociocultural slash technological forces are probably the biggest ones right now because our society is changing so quickly and because, like we have all these new like means of communication and like lightning fast like information like absorption. Like we basically have access to like far more information than every human being every generation before us ever. So like we can make executive decisions and like actually know things as opposed to like a lot of people who were just guessing or were kind of kept behind the curtains. So in my opinion, like those are probably the biggest deal because like, phones are letting everybody kind of like talk to each other and be like, yeah, this shit sucks or like this is my problem. And then you're also like having people who work in these companies and like have problems with what's going on, whistleblow outside with like technology and stuff like that. Like we've got all these like dairy farms and stuff like that where like these videos of like these cows being abused will come out and like, there'll be like a boycott of whatever dairy farm owned that specific establishment. Like I think it happened with Fairlife a while ago. Like there was a big scandal with like some of the Fairlife farms, and somebody figured out about it because like a TV crew went in there with their like secret cameras and all that stuff and filmed it, sent it out. Everybody saw it and was like, "Ooh, we're not buying that milk anymore." So I think those are like those. I don't know if it's necessarily giving power to the people, but it is giving people the ability to like make their own decisions and kind of see who's ethical and who's not.
Well, and it
Yeah.
gives people a chance to talk about it. And that's one of like the biggest things is like you find something out. But the other thing that really kind of screws with that is like on social media, it could also become a way for some companies to go after other companies, whether it's true or not. And that can turn into a company having losing business even though they are doing nothing wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I cut you off. I mean, yeah. Um, the communication channels were really good, and like that lady wrote 900 some reviews. She reviewed every product she had purchased. That's really cool. Very few consumers actually do that. But if you look at shit, this is gonna kind of get conspiratorial-ish. But if you look at the modern media landscape, there's a lot of polarization that's happening. So I'd argue, or you could argue, I wouldn't necessarily argue this now, but you could argue that there's less communication happening between people, or less valued communication, given fake accounts or fake um, reviews on products, and then you're placed into an echo chamber or um, an epistemic bubble in which you're only hearing the information that you like to hear due to super personalized algorithms feeding you your information on social media sites. That can be bypassed if you decide to make the conscious decision to do in-depth research, but not everybody wants to do that. They've made it really easy, or big companies have made it really easy to gather information, but the information you're gathering isn't the best information.
That's fair. I was also gonna say like that kind of gets into like the dead internet theory and like all these like bots, like basically just like being like, like my mom recently downloaded TikTok and she's kind of a comment warrior. And like I'll like look at some of the conversation see she has like on the side of some of these videos, and I'm like, there's no way that this is a real person arguing with you. I'm like, this is like obviously like just some like pre-programmed bot who's just like trying to piss you off for some reason, like, antagonize you. And she has no idea. She's just like clueless. She is just like, oh no, this person is just the biggest dick ever. Like I have a problem with this. Like, so it's kind of crazy. And she's also surrounded by like these other faceless profile accounts where it's like, they're saying all this wild shit and like supporting her and doing all this weird stuff. So it's like, how much of that is like corporation intervention and like stuff like that in order to like make people think certain ways and like view things in specific kinds of light. Or like Stanford just did some experiment where they took an AI and they sent it into a bunch of subreddits, and its job was basically to like convince people like or like change their opinions or something like that. And like the study was to see if like a human was better at doing it or an AI or a bot was better at doing it. And the bot had like or the AI had like a 67 to 68% higher success rate than any of the people in their like control group. So like that's scary. That's
Yeah.
horrible.
It's crazy.
Mm,
And I think it's also like on the internet, you can't differentiate like AI versus human. So it's like you could believe in AI, like in that report.
yeah.
Deep fakes are scary too. Like when
I've
you got
seen
AI.
there's lots of celebrities with that new deepfake AI stuff that I totally thought was real. It's
Yeah,
just,
no, it's actually crazy. Like some of that stuff, that's going to be a huge, huge factor
yeah,
in marketing, like coming up soon. Like, what do we do with like companies being able to just like AI some celebrity to like
yeah,
say whatever they want, do whatever they want instead of having to like pay that person, like
exactly.
actually advertise for them. Like what kind of legal gray areas is this going to get us into?
Like I don't know if you guys have seen that video. It was when AI first became like kind of big. It was Will Smith eating the
He's like eating
spaghetti or whatever,
spaghetti.
and they
Yeah.
just remade it, and it looks exactly like him. Like they just
Yeah.
remade it the other day. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I think
Unfortunately,
they could definitely use something like that in the future for all their marketing concepts.
but if you look at oh the I'm not necessarily sure how this was going to affect general consumers, but if you look at Hollywood, um, the the likeness and the character of an actor is what I've seen is it's somewhat disappearing. Like you can't necessarily name actors below the age of 20 or 25 who are really good. You know, you have a couple that are fantastic, that are stars, Hollywood stars. But then in the case in which they die out, their likeness could continue. Like if
Exactly.
Tom Cruise dies tomorrow, they could continue to use Tom Cruise in the movies.
Well, that's actually happened a shitload because there have been a ton of people who like die in the process of making movies or like, like have like these Hollywood actors will like sign on to a deal where they're supposed to do this movie and then something happens, they die. That movie will use their likeness through like CGI, AI, like all these different like manipulation techniques and like, just like put that onto somebody else, like use somebody else's like acting talent and then like basically plaster the other actor's likeness all over it. Like, what is that? That's so funky. It's just, ugh.
Well, and with everything like that, I mean, just imagine how the next 10 years are going to look because they keep updating it, they keep adding to it. I mean, eventually we're not even going to have real actors in our movies. It's all just
Yeah.
going to be CGI and AI and all of that.
Yeah. But if you, another, I think we've really harped on the consumer's aspect in the marketing environment. But
Mm.
another thing to look at is the economic environment.
Oh,
I think the
yes.
economic environment is really cool. It
Well,
affects
it's cooked right
everything.
now.
Like if you don't have disposable income to go buy a treat at or
Can't be a consumer.
yeah, you can't consume that. So that company is going to take a hit. And most recently, given Trump's announcement of tariffs and then the instability in the market, companies don't necessarily know what to do. Um, if you like, it's just strange. At the moment, the economy is a little in flux. Um,
Well, buying power is also in the dumps right now. Like, if you look at economically, like the power of the dollar comparatively to like even during the Great Depression, obviously, like unemployment was a little bit higher during the Great Depression, but average wages equated, like for the dollar today would be like equatable to like 80 grand. So like the average earning wage during the Great Depression was about 80 or $90,000. The average age or the average wage or like salary right now among Americans is like 33 to $34,000. So we have like less than half of the buying power than our grandparents or like great grandparents did in the Great Depression.
yeah, and that touches on individuals' ability, not it, yeah, consumers' ability to. The first thing we talked about,
Mhm.
power in the market. You don't have it. The buying power is gone, or not gone, minimal. It's very small
Indeed.
comparatively.
Very, very small. And this
All
also
right.
like gets into like, oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say like this is gonna get into like like recessionary like times and patterns and stuff like that. Like like when we have like factors like a crypto market boom like we had last summer. We had a bunch of idiots like becoming millionaires on like meme coins and shit like that. I'm sure that was great for a lot of those like like luxury brand car companies and like those people that are like selling like the illusion of like being wealthy like that kind of deal. I bet that was great for them, but it sure as shit wasn't great for the average consumer because then like essentially now in America, if you are of, of average intelligence and average skill without a college degree, you're essentially like boned into trying to gamble to get rich or like just praying something good happens at some point. So that's a lot of fun right now.
Yeah. Oh, hmm. And then if you,
I'm gonna say I'm kind of at a loss. I think I've kind of said as much as I have to say about all the prompts.
Hmm.
Yeah, are we ready to end this? Does anyone else have anything else to say?
I'm satisfied with
I'm
my
good.
responses personally. All righty.
Okay,
Hey,
I'll stop the recording.
great first podcast, guys. Fantastic.
So-
And then